Welcome to Sports Spectrum. As you know, it is Matt Forte and Jason Romano here, as always. And Jason, today we got one of my South Side guys. I'm excited about this because I'm in Chicago. My
Yeah.
wife is, when you come to Chicago, you got to pick White Sox or Cubs. And she picked the Cubs. So I was like, I'm not from here. I'm from Louisiana. So I'm going to pick against you. I'm a White Sox dude. And I go to
Nice.
church on the South Side. So we got Fraser Ellard, my White Sox MLB pitcher, on the podcast today. Excited to have you here, fellow PAO alumni too. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And I want to start off with you because I don't know your testimony. I don't know your story either. So just talk a little bit about that. How did you come to faith and just your process of where you are now?
Mm. Yeah, so kind of cliff notes for me, background wise, grew up in a family of 12 kids. So, yeah, a ton of craziness. And it was really awesome though. Like both my parents were very strong believers. Like we would do home church actually, which was really fun. And so like being surrounded by really cool role models who showed me what it was like to walk with Jesus, to pray with him, to have fellowship with him. And so fast forward a few years, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, ended up passing away when I was 13. Through that, it, I mean, obviously, like threw my family into a lot of grief, but it was also threw my family into a complete and utter reliance on God. And so being in that really like pivotal stage for myself, seeing, sisters crying like almost every day, seeing my brothers process it in their own ways, and seeing my mom try to handle it all, being now a single mom, trying to figure out how to raise like at the time it was I think four teenagers, five teenagers, and the rest were kind of out of the house. But it kind of showed me that like something in the world doesn't really add up when you look at it from a worldly perspective. And like through that grief, through that pain, I kind of just got honest with myself. I was like, there has to be something that like this is for. And like there has to be a purpose, right? Like I would think from almost every single person in the world, they would agree with that statement. Like there is a purpose. Um, and it's such a fundamental human experience. And so fast forward a little bit further to Easter of 2011, and it was actually the first Easter I'd ever gone to for with Passion City. They had just started their church down in Atlanta, and so we'd gone there. And Louis Giglio was talking about how, like, just painting the picture of the true suffering and like what that means for a God that comes down and gives you that kind of like love, and sacrifice, and like the pain that he went through, and like what it really meant to be separated from like God, right, and go into mortality. And so I was just really struck by that. And so I gave my life to Jesus when I was 13 there on that Easter service. And from then on, it was really like I kind of thought the way my dad always explained it, which I thought was so cool, is he got saved when he was in college, so a little bit later. And he's like, yeah, I gave my life to Jesus. And when I first opened up my Bible, it was like Star Wars, like the words were just like popping out at me. And I was like, man, that's so cool. That's about to happen to me. And so I go home and then I'm reading and I'm like, oh, it's like still like paper. And so then it was kind of like a reality check of, okay, like God has given me salvation. I have salvation through him now. Like, how does that give me confidence to approach him like with everything? And how does that like open itself up to a true relationship rather than that like give and take of like, oh, I'm going to read my Bible because I feel guilty, or I'm going to, go to church because my mom wants me to. And so that was honestly a really long journey for me of like, God doesn't have to have me read my Bible. Like he doesn't have to have me do these things. Like I'm not so important that like he can't work through other things, And so then realizing like, okay, where I'm at now is like, I want to read my Bible. I want to pray because like, I want to be with God because I know I'm at my best when I'm with him. Um, and kind of getting away from that like performance based kind of gospel that even though my parents didn't really teach that to me in as many words, I like kind of manifested in my own way. Um, and so yeah, I think it's been a really long journey of like gaining confidence in like who he is, who his character is. and like truly trying to foster a relationship that is dependent on like who God says I am before I even do anything, rather than like what I can do to try to make him like happy with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense, man. And I want to dive into that because when we talk about, and I'm so glad you are one of 12. My mom was one of 12. Huge family, lots of aunts and uncles, and I'm amazed. I only have one older brother, so I didn't grow up in like a giant family like that, and I'm always amazed at how they function and how they check on each other and take care of each other. But um, growing up in church, and having two parents uh, that came to faith early and instilled that in you guys, it does actually bring some different challenges than if not. And oftentimes we try to piggyback off that faith, or it turns into something that anesthetizes us theologically, where it's like, I'm good because, I'm saved. But it hadn't really cost us anything yet, as discipleship and all of that coming to Christ really talks about. Like, count the cost of discipleship and carrying your own cross and bearing your own cross and all that. So when did you really make faith your own? And because
Mhm.
when we're talking about, like, if you grow up in it, you can kind of just piggyback off of everyone else, or just the environment that you've been raised in.
Yeah, I think honestly, for me, going through high school, going through college, that whole time it was like me driving the decisions, and I would always talk to my now wife about this. If like, I think there's kind of two people in the world, of people that like have situations thrust upon them and people that like act on their situations before um, those situations can like act on them. And I was always like, yeah, like I'm the second one. I'm acting on my situation. Like I'm the driver of my life. And it really wasn't until um, going finishing the 2022 minor league season. Um, I remember that was my first like full season of minor league baseball. I was like, this is really hard. Just like mentally, the grind is just so challenging, right? Like you're away from family. I remember like I missed our beach trip that my family takes. I missed like the family reunion that my family does. I missed the 4th of July celebrations. I missed all these things. And that was really my perspective, right? Of all the things I was missing. I was like, man, like this really stinks. This really stinks. And like I don't like it. I'm not having fun. Like I want to be done. And so going into that last couple weeks, I was like, I'm gonna be done. Like this is it. Like I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna do like marketing or whatever, and like I'm gonna have fun and like be with my family. It's gonna be great. And so I'm like trying to be really intentional with that process. And I had was talking to one of my sisters about it. And I was like, yeah, like I think I'm good. And I'm trying to still pray through it. I'm not totally sure. And she hit me with something. She was in the Marine Corps for like 8 years, and she hit me with something really powerful. And she was like, "Yeah, I was going through that same decision when my first like service time in the Marine Corps was over, and did I like re up or not re up?" And she was like, "Has God given you a clear word that like you're done?" I was like, "Well, I don't know." And I think that's what I told her. I was like, "I don't know." And in my head, I knew. I was like, "No, he hasn't." And she's like, "Well, if she's like, I don't know where you're at then, whatever, whatever. But if he hasn't given you a clear word, and like he hasn't given you that peace that passes understanding of leaving this like to be done," he's like, then she's like, "So who are you to change your circumstances just because you don't want it, even though God has not told you to change your circumstances?" I was like, "Hey, I don't like how truthful that is." And so that was the first time like I started praying about it more, and I really it's like, man, God's not done with this. And even though I could look at it from the perspective of everything I'm missing, what happens if I flip that switch and look at all the guys I can impact and like communicate, like have fellowship with, and like witness to in this world that is just so broken? I was like, all right, let's do it. And so yeah, I would say that was like truly one of the first like pivotal big moments of God, you're first.
Yeah, it's like such an epiphany and it's funny because on the other side, it feels like, why didn't I think of that so long ago? When it becomes clear, when we actually acknowledge God and He makes our path straight, as the scriptures say, and you like, wait, this is my purpose within what I'm doing. This is my identity, and I can make it my own. You mentioned a peace that surpasses all understanding. I want to go back a second to You growing up, you lost your dad at a younger age, and it could be easy to say, Lord, I mean, leaving a mom with 12 kids and all these kids and raising them by themselves, like, why would you take my father right now? And having to grieve that, and not, and even being young and not as mature as you probably would be now as an adult to like fully understand that and how God works. And it is true human in humanity, like as we're born, we seek comfort. It's a natural thing, even as babies, like you just seek comfortability. But that's not the gospel. It's the peace and the comfort within suffering, right? And so how were you able to walk through that part and be able to grieve? And there's no book or cookie cutter way to do that. How were you able to do that in a way that didn't lead to your detriment, but actually to become who you are today?
Mhm. Yeah, big question. I think it's kind of honestly one of those things I'm still starting to process, or still processing through, like the impact that that's had throughout my life and like the way I view things even now. Um, I think one of the most impactful things is kind of what we were just talking about. It gave me a sense of like, okay, I'm just gonna do everything then. And in a lot of ways, it made me more callous to um, honestly, it's like the type of relationship my mom has with Jesus, where it's like very much God's gonna lead every direction. Like I'm not gonna move until God says I move, and like very prayerful, very like in awe. And it was subconscious for me, but I was like, man, I don't want to be in awe of a God who like I think I wrapped my head around like when my dad died, like that happens, right? Death happens. So like, I don't want to be in awe of a God who like lets people die, lets those things happen, and then like lets that suffering of the family continue and like doesn't bring healing super quick. Just like seeing my siblings and myself. And so um I think the way that kind of started to transform is there's actually the song Good Good Father. I always had a really hard time with that song because I was like you're not my dad. Like my dad is my dad, you know? And like he's gone. And I think it wasn't until probably starting around the end of high school, maybe around the beginning of college, where I really started to see like how God has connected all the dots, and like been that steady hand. And I think when you look at like when I'm able to take that bird's eye view, my dad always called it like the 10,000 feet, go up to 10,000 feet and like see where my life is and see the relationship I have with him, and um, like the way that he's grown me and the situations he's put me in and the struggle. It's like, man, I can't be as reliant on him, like how I can't be as reliant on him like I am now without going through so many of those things I wish I didn't go through in those moments. And so I think the biggest thing that I learned was kind of what you were talking about. Like, there's going to be hardship, there's going to be struggle, there's going to be like honestly, like there's going to be death, um, and things that should don't make sense from the worldly perspective. But through that all, like, how can we praise God and how can we praise Jesus? Because at the end of the day, like every drop of like pain that we feel is like an ocean to him.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think like wrapping my head around that, like beautiful picture of everything we feel like God feels a million times more. And like there's a brokenness to this world, not because of God, but because of us.
Mhm.
And kind of like taking that more that perspective kind of towards the end of Job, right? Where he's like, Jesus kind of puts him in his, or God puts him in his place. And it's like, oh, did you make the oceans? Did you make the Leviathan? Did you make these things? And it's like, no, I didn't. Right? Like I'm a 27-year-old kid who has one of the most limited perspectives, right? And it's always going to be like that. And so rather than like asking God, oh, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? If from like an accusatory tone, changing that perspective to like, God, show me why. Like, please ease my heart and give me the why. And if you don't, I'm still going to praise you anyway. I think honestly, my mom just modeled that really, really well and still does. And so it's one of those things that's hard for that heart to thaw, but when it does, it's been very, very life-giving. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such a good answer to that because it is. I think that is and may be the hardest thing that mentally, or even well, all mentally and emotionally and spiritually that we go through is the grief process of like the part that we don't understand. We want answers. And as he said to Job, rhetorically, all those answers was probably one of the most sobering scriptures that I've ever read when he's asking all those like, oh, did you make the sunrise? Like, and all these questions that Job's kind of sitting there like, yeah, you are God. I'm literally finite in my understanding and my knowledge as well. But I wanted to get to the point of where we were talking about scripture. You talked about Job, and then um, as I thought about Paul when Paul prayed, not just asked God or meditated on. He prayed and asked God to remove that thorn from his side, and he's like, is my grace sufficient?" And just understanding that, it gives you, I guess, a perspective of when you go through stuff, you get this and you get the understanding on the other side, whether you get answers or not. There's like a gratitude aspect of it. Like, I'm just grateful to be here right now where you have me, even though all the answers aren't, or all the questions aren't answered. Um, just talk about how wake up today and every day and you have a gratitude going forward, uh, just based off your relationship with Christ and how you're able to process, that God still is good, even though bad things do happen.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I think it's one of those kind of perspective shifts for me of even like when you honestly when you ask that question, my immediate thought was like, oh, like my wife and like my family. And it's like, well, those things can be taken too, like they truly can. Um, and like through that, how would I praise him? And I think it's like realizing that again, like with the perspective thing, like I think kind of the way Ecclesiastes talks about it as well, of like everything in this world that we have and like can wrap our heads around, like it really is meaningless. Um, and I think when you look at that from a non-Christian perspective, that can be really scary. And that's like, okay, well, if my life has no purpose, then I don't care. I'm just going to seek pleasure. But I think from a Christian perspective, like that is so liberating, right? Where I can wake up and some days is better than others, but like I can wake up with that like freedom of my performance on the field does not matter. Like my um I don't know, the clothes I'm wearing or the car I'm driving, like none of this truly matters. Like the only thing that does is like my relationship with God and whether I am like pushing others toward him or pushing them like, away from him. Um, and so for me, that perspective like shows up in every day, like waking up with my wife and being able to talk through like, hey, like what do we need to pray for? And what are we talking through? And like what are we reading together and things like that. And like having, I think that fellowship at the beginning of the day fosters a perspective of like open hands. I think we talked about it at PAO, where it's like having that open hands perspective, where it's like, God, move me, like show me where you want me to take my gifts. And if like baseball's gone, if other things are gone, if health is gone, then like, all right, like how are you going to use that?
Yeah, so good. Like the relentless pursuit of him, right? And you said something that I liked, and I wrote it down: is no purpose, you're going to seek personal pleasure. And that's kind of the weighted scales of our lives. Is when you have no purpose, your purpose is going to be just to satisfy yourself or to gratify that with temporary gratification or instant gratification, which is kind of the culture. What can you do for me now? Or what gives me this like even social media, like the like, it's some kind of dopamine thing that they talk about and the brain goes off just because of that. And it reads like a short attention span and also a lack of wanting to build something, or when you plant a seed and go like, that's the whole kingdom. Everything is kind of a slow process when it comes to sanctification, when it comes to just your life and the process of that. But knowing our purpose is so important because that roots your identity. And I wanted to talk to you because you mentioned waking up with, and reading. What are you reading with your wife? And congratulations, by the way, on being married recently too. That's also big. We want to always announce when people are getting married or when they, get engaged and all that stuff. But when we talk about discipline, you got to be really disciplined as an athlete. We know that because we actively do it every day, and it's something that's kind of ingrained in us. So if you want to be great, you got to be disciplined. So how does that translate over into your spiritual life of the disciplines, and what kind of disciplines do you use? They call them, if you go to seminary, spiritual disciplines of, maybe it's reading the Bible or you're meditating or praying. What kind of things do you work on when it comes to that?
Yeah. Well, to be completely transparent, like it's something I've been kind of in like a drought with recently, where it's been difficult, I think, for me to prioritize that in the mornings. Like I was just talking to my wife, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and we were both sitting there and we're like, hey, like this is a trend that we don't want to keep going, with like our lack of intentionality. And so I think first answer is like it's hard to be consistent, but I think the consistency in like finding a way to be with God and like in what you enjoy, right? Like starting with the easiest things. Like for me, I love reading books. And sometimes it's the Bible, but like the Bible can be really hard to digest sometimes, and sometimes it's hard for me to like find the applications and things like that. And so um like right now we're reading through Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools by Tyler Staton. And that's something like it's been kind of a theme for us the past year is how can we improve our prayer life. So I think it starts with that. Like having those goals, in my opinion, is really important. Like being very goal oriented. Of I want to improve my relationship with God in like the personal capacity. Like I've got a decent bit of knowledge. Like I can do some theology stuff, whatever. Like I want to know God and I want him to know me, like on the most personal of levels. And so the way I think that manifests itself is through prayer and through just like meditation with him. And so like in an ideal world, and when like we're doing a good job, it's she'll read her own like pieces of the Bible, and then I read my own piece of the Bible, and then we get to share in like a new way where it's like, hey, I'm reading this and I found this. And then she's like, oh, cool, I'm reading this, I found this. Where it's less of like the Bible study-ish, like getting the same thing from the same passages. And it's like truly she's teaching me stuff, I'm teaching her stuff, which has been really cool. Um, and then it's also like trying to pray before we go to bed every night, and like sharing that time, and like orienting ourselves, even like as we're about to go to sleep. Like there's spiritual warfare when you sleep. People I think like get scared of like the whole spiritual warfare stuff. Like it's everywhere. It's in your dreams. It's when you're awake and when you're dreaming. And so I think like being intentional with that, like setting the stage. It's like, hey, we're about to go into battle. And then like we'll pray. And one of the big things that probably my favorite thing that we do is we pray every time we go to the field, and we sit in the car when she drops me off, and praying over like specific guys that we've been trying to win this to, or couples or people, things that people are going through, things like that. And just like setting the stage for when I go into that field. It's like constantly reverberate. Those words that we're praying are reverberating in my mind. It's like I'm on a mission to help this guy. I'm on a mission to help this. I'm on a mission to help him. And then it's like, oh, and yeah, like I'm also here to play baseball. You know.
Yeah, that's so good. It's having your priorities right, and then also in prayer, um, not always making it about yourself, right? Is we, I often pray is I hope people are praying for me, and I know that even before I was here or when I was a kid, I know my grandparents were even praying, for my life and future. And those things are important because prayer is super powerful. And you mentioned even, having a drought. I just want to say this is that's okay too. Like, don't feel we're very hard as I guess as athletes. I know I'm very hard on myself, and we can be like, man, you're not doing enough and you're not doing this. And God is like, enough doing can't get you anything. Just doing this and doing that is who are you being? And that's
Mhm.
what's most important. And so sometimes we do go through spiritual droughts or drought where it's like, man, I didn't pray enough this morning, or I didn't read enough, or I didn't prioritize God. And you're not going to be on the top all the time. Like it's hard to
But I
do
want to
that.
be.
But yeah, but it's our mindset. Like you want to be so, but that's a good thing. Is like because that gives us that conviction of you're not going, you're slacking in this part, but having a goal. And uh, nobody really teaches us or talks about the intimacy with Christ, like having that intimate type of relationship where you talk about like I think about David, and he'd be so honest and transparent with God, and his prayers would be, and he'd literally be like almost to the point of where he's not bossing him around, with like, God, incline your ear to my prayers, like listen to me, please. And I think God respects the honesty or the truthfulness that comes out of a contrite heart. So when it comes to those spiritual disciplines and things like that, I think it's important. And we get to see, even through some of the issues that you have gone through in your life and testimony of ups and downs, that we get to see both sides of God, where people often think of him as this like father figure, like where it's all discipline, it's all like lessons being taught the hard way. But there's a comforting side. There is a motherly side, and I don't want to get into the people who are like, God is a woman or God is a man. It's like God is God. He's in a class all by himself. He's not, he made humans. So, but that is just so cool to me when it gives me the desire for an intimate relationship with Christ, because you get the balance of what you need. There is some times where you need discipline or you learn hard lessons. Then there's other times where his grace comes and just washes over you and you're like, wow, I could have been dead, and literally he saved me from that. So going forward, um, where should we go from here? I think I want to talk about the MLB. You made your debut in July of last year, 2024. And so let's talk about first, what was that like? And then what was unexpected and hard to go through?
Um, it was a lot of different emotions. I would say leading up to it is a lot of anxiousness. So it was kind of a wild one for us because it was right around the trade deadline, and they told me, I think on a Friday, maybe Friday night, they were like, "Hey, you're gonna go to the big leagues." It's like awesome, like this is so cool. We were in Nashville, so I leave out early Saturday, get there, and then I'm telling my family, so and obviously having a huge family, they like it's Airbnb and like we're all hanging out. Like so, like when are you gonna go? I was like, I don't know. They told me to kind of like sit tight, and so it was like me and four other guys that had all gotten called up for like potential trades, and so some of the other guys get activated, and I'm like sitting there, and it's like some other guys get activated, another guy gets activated, and it's like, okay, since like day three, nothing, and like they're communicating with me the whole time. They're like, hey, like we're still waiting on the trade. Day four, nothing. I think it's day five, when they're like, hey, trade's gonna happen, like be ready to go. I'll let you know when you can come to the field. All right. Sounds good. Like super, super excited. And but like leading up to that, I was like, man, like, is it gonna happen? Am I gonna sit back down? Like, are they gonna make the trade or not? So there's a lot of like unknowns and honestly a lot of like that fear mentality of, oh well, like I want to make it to the big leagues. Like I'm this close. If I get sent back down, like that was the thing. Um, and so anyway, get the call, get to the field like kind of later, go through things, whatever. And then they're like, hey, you're probably gonna pitch today. And then we're up 2-1 in the eighth inning. Phone rings and like, hey, get Fraser and like get Ellard going. And so then I go in like a 2-1 ball game. Like can't feel my legs. Can't like it was the most like nerve-wracking thing because not only is it my debut, but like I'm trying to like help us preserve a lead. It's like, all right, like let's see what we can do. And I ended up like walking two guys. And I think I got one guy out like a fly ball. They pulled me, and then we ended up losing the game. So I got the L on my debut and the blown save. Um, and um, so that was like obviously not an ideal situation to go into. And it kept me up at night a little bit. I was like, man, like, am I gonna be able to throw strikes in the big leagues? Am I gonna be able to do this? Um, and so I would say that was kind of the unexpected thing is I thought when I got there it'd be, and like everybody says this, but you only really get it like when you're there. It's like I thought when I got there, I'd be like, oh, okay, like we're good, like I've made it, like we're all right. But when you get there, then it's all about like how do I stay? How do I stay? How do I stay? Like I want to be here. I want to be here. And it's like the anxiety doesn't go away. Like the yeah, like the performance based. you either perform or you leave. It doesn't go
Mhm.
away. And so I think that was kind of a hard like adjustment of it only gets harder, right? Because then you have way more articles about you. You have media talking to you. You have this. You have that. Um, and so yeah, it's been like an awesome journey, and it's been really really cool. But yeah, that's been an unexpected thing of like it's all the same. It's just like the moments feel bigger.
Yeah, yeah. We all have this, like, especially when you come to the big leagues or when you get drafted in the NFL and things like that. Your performance really um, can become your persona, which is not a good thing. But that's why it's so important for us to be rooted in Christ, because you aren't what you do. That's not all you are. It's not going to last forever. And but it is important to have preparation and to perform where you know you're literally glorifying God with the talent that you've developed, that He's given us, right? And I can just imagine even the tone of the big leagues, where you get sent, called up and sent down. That can play a mental game on you, where it's like your value, like, oh, my value's up, my value's down. And the performance based stuff, man, is just so hard because you have to balance it in the right way, or you'll have that anxiousness or that anxiety about, can I really do this? And a lot of people do go through performance anxiety out there, where I've seen guys in practice be like all world. It was like, man, this dude is amazing. And then the game comes, and it's like that anxiety of having to go out there and do it in front of people or on a larger scale or TV, and they struggle. Um, so those things, me and Jason, we always talk about the identity being rooted in Christ, and we're glad that you have that, because going forward, uh, the games and all that stuff, it gets bigger, and the opportunities that God gives you are going to be bigger and bigger, and you're going to be able to glorify Him. So, but Jason, I know you got something.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. I think we need to get you back on, Fraser, because I know your story of just even making it to be a big league pitcher is kind of crazy. When you talk about Truett McConnell University, never heard of it. Lander University, never heard of it. I've heard of Liberty, and that's good. And ultimately, it leads to you being selected in the 8th round. But we'll get to that story, I think, the next time we have you back on. I'm just going to put you to the test here. You have 12 siblings, right? Or 11 siblings, right? It's 12 of you. Let's go through the names of all of them and have you share the siblings with us. And where are you in the pecking order of the
So
12, 12
I'm number
kids?
10 out of the 12. So
Okay.
I'm part of what's called like the four little boys, which is ironic because we're all the biggest. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so the oldest is Zach. He lives in Charlotte, and I actually lived with him for a little bit. And then the next one is Duder. He lives in Alabama, but they're actually moving to Atlanta to hang out with my other brother. And then my oldest sister is Breckley. Her and her husband and their family live in Kenya. And then my next sister is Britton. Her and her husband right now are living in Japan, but they're moving back to DC. He's in the Marine Corps. She's the Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And then Claren is in Augusta, Georgia, with her husband and family. And then Tira is in Wisconsin. She's about to move to West Virginia. It'll be a little bit closer to family, which will be great, with her husband. And then Fernay is in Washington, D.C. And then my sister Roxy is in Charlotte, which is where I am as well, with her family. She's actually my next door neighbor, which is super fun.
Nice.
And then my older brother Weaver is in Atlanta with his family. And then my little brother Walter is also in Atlanta, that's where we grew up with his wife. And then my baby brother Avery, who's about to get married in June, is also in Atlanta.
You passed the
That's
test.
12. Yeah. Don't ask me the birthdays.
Wow.
I won't do that. But you said Kenya. And then I thought, oh, wow, we have a whole nother podcast, Matt, we got to
Yeah.
do with, I think you said your sister is in Kenya.
Yeah.
So are they missionaries real quick? Is that what they're doing out there?
Actually really cool. So her husband runs a microinsurance company out there. And so they provide insurance to a lot of like low income people out there and gives them protection.
Wow.
So
that is
like
ministry
kind
work.
of mission focused, but not like affiliated with like anything like that. So
incredible. What a family, huh, Matt?
Have you been out to Kenya before?
no, I really, really want to go.
Yeah, I want to go too. My wife went, and she sent back all the pictures in the Masai Mara, and she saw all the animals. I'm a big National Geographic guy, Discovery Channel, with all the big cats and all that. And she saw every animal. I was so jealous. I've only been to Zimbabwe and Johannesburg. So I got to get out there
Nice.
to
Yeah.
Kenya too.
Let's make a trip, man.
There you
Yeah,
go.
let's do
Yeah.
it.
Apparently, they've got really good coffee out there too. So
Love it. I love it. Awesome stuff, Fraser.
Well, yeah, man. Thanks you for your time and your story and everything, and look forward to having you back on Sports Spectrum too. Thank you, brother.
yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. This was awesome.
Hey, thanks for watching Sports Spectrum here on YouTube. You can click our next video, or you can check out our website, sportspectrum.com.